With my go-to doc. I am a functional medicine physician. I've been practicing for about 20 years. Today's topic is important for long haul COVID patients. It's important for all patients because it's such a common problem. It's sleep. Sleep is so important, and sleep is somewhat still sort of a mystery why it's essential. The benefits of sleep, we know that it provides better energy throughout the following day. We know that it improves mood. We know that the immune system is improved by getting adequate amounts of sleep. We know that a majority of hormones are produced with restful sleep. So that includes growth hormones, sex hormones like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, adrenal hormones like cortisol, so stress hormones. We also know that that's the time period where a lot of liver detoxification happens. So getting adequate amounts of sleep, somewhere between 7 to 9 hours per day, is essential for overall health and well being. So, I just want to talk some generalities about sleep. We'll get into some specifics on how it relates to long haul COVID patients and uh, vaccine injury patients, but taking every step that you can to ensure adequate amounts of restful sleep is very important. So I will open it up here just with some statistics. There are basically two types of insomnia or sleep difficulty. One is sleep onset, that's difficulty falling asleep. And the other is sleep maintenance, which is either frequent or early awakening. And those are different types of sleep disorders, and they can be combined, and you can experience both difficulty falling asleep or frequent and early awakening. They tend to occur separately more often than not. But there are different phenomenon that's going on with difficulty falling asleep, which seems to be more related to dietary issues, anxiety, and frequent or early awakening is also related to dietary issues, although separate dietary issues, and more likely fatigue and depression. So a little bit of differences in difficulty falling asleep and staying asleep. So insomnia of all kinds is very common. Within any given year, about 30% of the population complains of some sort of sleep disorder. In fact, it's one of the most common check boxes that's checked when you go and visit a doctor, physician, healthcare provider for a checkup. So it's very common, and about 20% of the population has a chronic sleep disorder. So it may not happen every single night, but it does turn into chronic. Now, I stated that about 30% of the general population suffers from some sort of insomnia. That number goes way up with long haul COVID patients and vaccine injury patients. In fact, it it goes north of 50%. So it's extremely common. And when you look at overall symptomatology of long haul COVID symptoms, yes, the common ones are cough, fatigue, brain fog, but insomnia is right up there among one of the most common chronic symptoms that occur subsequent uh, to COVID or vaccine injury. And the treatment for it is taking a hypnotic, taking benzodiazepine of some sort, and millions, in fact, over 100 million prescriptions are written every year for sleep disorders. So, coming up with a more comprehensive functional medicine approach is important because that's a lot of prescriptions each and every year. So, when I sit down with a patient, having a functional medicine consult, I really try to review the overall picture. I try to get a detailed background on recreational, prescription, and non prescription drug use history because all of those can play an important role. Dietary and beverage history, which can play an important role contributing to insomnia. what their stress levels are like, what their relationships are like, what their exercise regimens are like. So there are common medications that can interfere with sleep, certainly thyroid medications, oral contraception, and hormone replacement therapy, beta blockers for heart conditions and high blood pressure, marijuana, alcohol, coffee, tea, chocolate. We know that all of those can disrupt sleep. And so, trying to get a good understanding of the overall picture of the health and wellness of the individual goes a very long way into correcting some of the root causes of impaired sleep. We won't get into the stages of sleep 1 through 4 and REM sleep. There's fascinating studies that have been done on it. And we'll get into hormones a little bit later, but it is critical to note right off the bat that uh, growth hormone, which is sort of a stress anti-aging hormone, is produced primarily at night. And growth hormone is difficult to test for directly, but you can test for some of the metabolites of growth hormones, such as IGF-1. And so I would encourage you to do that. Get tested for your growth hormone output. Let's see. We also know that the sleep hormone, melatonin, is one of the body's most potent antioxidants in the body. And we know that post COVID patients have a terrible time with reactive oxygenated species, oxygenated species, and oxidation processes that do critical damage to blood cells, white blood cells, the immune system, fibrinogen, inflammatory cascades. And so, melatonin, we know, should be produced at night. Growth hormone, similarly, is anti inflammatory, as well as glutathione. And I mentioned earlier that glutathione is produced predominantly during nighttime restful sleep. It's a powerful antioxidant that the liver produces to help detoxification pathways. And if we're not getting adequate sleep, we're not getting the added benefits of all of those antioxidant hormones that should be produced as we sleep. So, sleep hygiene is something I want to touch on right now. And, commonly it's called sleep hygiene. What does that mean? It means that the room is dark and it's comfortable and there's no activity going on besides sleep and sexual activity in your bed. I like to call it noise. And so this can be physical noise in the background, a creaky bed, a TV or a radio on in the background. It can be screen noise. So I highly discourage you using phones and tablets and computers in your bed. Do that in your office, do that in your kitchen and your living room, but your bedroom should really be screen free if at all possible. So that's another kind of noise. Dietary noise as well. So if you're eating high carbohydrate, sugary foods right before bed, caffeinated foods right before bed. Um, it's all synergistic in nature. And so all of this noise eventually passes a threshold where the brain just cannot shut down. And the cumulative effect is either difficulty falling asleep or frequent awakenings. And so, yes, making sure that sleep hygiene uh, is corrected or optimal is important. But when you think about sleep, think about kind of the counterbalance between the daytime noise that we all experience and then the nighttime quiet that is required for sleep. So, one of the best ways to encourage nighttime quiet, besides eliminating screens and the noises that I just spoke about, is to get into bed with the intention to sleep only when sleepy and use the bed, like I said, only for sleep and sexual activity. Don't watch the clock. If awake after approximately 20 minutes or so, leave the bedroom. engage in a restful activity, such as meditation, deep breathing exercise. This is a mind-body relationship where there's a monkey brain going on. There's a hamster running in the wheel, and we need to quiet the noise down. And so if after 15, 20 minutes you find yourself tossing and turning and thinking about either that day's activities or the next day's activities, I encourage you to get out of bed, go sit in a quiet room in a chair, and do some deep breathing exercises just for 10 or 15 minutes. A lot of free apps are available now on phones where they can kind of walk you through mindful, visualized deep breathing exercises, and they're very, very effective. If you're not one that is a fan of meditation, another way you can quiet the mind and kind of stop that monkey business in the brain is to do some journaling. So go sit in a quiet place and kind of reflect on the day, what you're grateful for that happened that day, what you anticipate tomorrow that you'll really try to focus on and work hard with, what you're going to be gracious for and feel blessed for the next day, just so that all of those thoughts are documented. They don't have to keep floating around in the brain like angry butterflies. They're actually documented. You can put them now on your nightstand. You know they're safe. You know they're there, and so you don't have to continue to perseverate on the ideas of either the current day or the next day. Dreaming is a whole different topic. Most everybody dreams, and some individuals, they have a little bit of sleep phobia, just because of past dreams that they may have had. They feel like they're either nightmares, they feel like they're suffering, they just can't get out of this cycle of, uh, gosh, I'm going to go lay in bed tonight and I'm just not going to be able to sleep because I'm going to have a bad experience. I'm going to toss and turn. I'm going to have a bad dream. And so for many that struggle with insomnia, the anticipation of having a good night can certainly negatively contribute to insomnia. And for many people who struggle with insomnia, compared to those who don't, the bedroom is a place of work, entertainment, and other associations that may be quite antagonistic to sleep. So, really trying to reimagine the bedroom not as a place of work or entertainment, um, but really as a sanctuary, a place of retreat from the world of waking, from the waking world, a place that's work free, stress free, clock free. It's timeless. It's a sanctuary where you're really asking yourself to be grateful for a anticipatory, restful night sleep. And some individuals who are religious really find that reading a spiritual book before bedtime can be helpful to kind of release some anxieties, not just from themselves, but from the collective consciousness of humankind, that there is peace, there is love, and there is a lot of blessing out there. The percentage of couples sleeping apart has increased pretty significantly over the past decade, and that number has also increased post COVID. Um, the numbers are pretty remarkable. It stands, post COVID patients now stand at about 30% who are sleeping apart. Now we know that has a negative effect on relationships, or it tends to. And it used to be that individuals, partners slept apart because of snoring or involuntary movements in bed, uh, making noises at night. And so differing sleep environments can be negotiated as well, and really trying to create the bedroom as a sense of sanctuary encourages not only better sleep, but better relationships. And, in some environmentally sensitive individuals, and certainly that increases post COVID or long haul COVID patients. You just become more sensitive to the environment, to environmental toxins, to smells, to off gassing from furniture and the actual bed and bedding. And so if you found that long haul COVID or injury vaccine, that you are struggling now with sleep and you're more sensitive to environmental toxins, scents, and smells, um, then it might be worth your while to get a HEPA filter, a good quality HEPA filter for your bedroom. Let's talk about exercise a little bit. Just a few curious things about exercise. Um, Pretty consistently, exercises, particularly in the morning. And that's interesting. PM exercise tends to be negatively associated with sleep, like going to the gym after work, for instance, is less helpful for insomnia than Tai Chi or yoga in the morning. And that's just fascinating to me that, vigorous exercise, maybe in the PM hours, is less effective for encouraging healthy, restful, optimal sleep than more therapeutic exercise, therapeutic movement in the AM hours. Um, and that's particularly true of individuals with difficulty falling asleep. And that's just fascinating to me. And the studies are pretty consistent with that. So, exercise, have it be therapeutic exercise, movement, therapeutic movement. And if you can, try to encourage that in the AM hours. And if you can take it an extra step and have that AM therapeutic movement occur outdoors instead of indoors, that extra step of therapeutic movement outdoors seems to even improve sleep parameters uh, even more markedly. Let's talk about nutrition a little bit. So, in individuals that have frequent awakenings, that may be due to glucose volatility. And so, if you're a diabetic or pre diabetic, making sure that blood sugar levels are steady throughout the day. And I encourage a protein meal, a higher protein meal at dinner times, or even a nighttime snack, because having too much refined carbohydrate just before bedtime, it can increase the spikes and valleys of your blood glucose, and that's going to make it more likely that you actually wake up. So the brain is highly dependent on glucose during the day, but less so at night. And so having a high carbohydrate meal just before bed is discouraged. And certainly in the individuals with known food allergies or food sensitivities, which are also more common post COVID or with long haul COVID vaccine injury patients, um, those food allergies and food sensitivities must be avoided during the daytime hours. And we know that caffeine can negatively contribute to poor sleep. It affects people more with chronic anxiety. It affects Caffeine affects more with people with any kind of heart condition. So any kind of heart palpitation, even high blood pressure. So caffeine and high blood pressure are not a good mix if we're thinking about promoting good sleep. So we spoke about the sleep hormone melatonin. There are some foods that either contain melatonin themselves or help encourage the body to produce melatonin at night. And even if consumed during the day, they just have some factors that help produce melatonin at night. These foods include kiwi, tart cherries, orange bell peppers, walnuts, flax seeds, tomatoes, goji berries. And then it's obviously important to encourage high antioxidant foods during the day because a lot of a lot of the body's restore and repair mechanisms occur at night. And so having those antioxidants preloaded on board during the day can help the body do what it needs to do at night. So let's talk about hormones now. There's a growing body of evidence that the development of sleep disorders following changes in hormones. So you can think of young men and women going through puberty, or middle-aged men and women going through either menopause or andropause. Those periods of hormone fluctuations, and here we're primarily talking about sex hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, are associated with poor sleeping patterns. In the adolescence, it tends to be prolonged sleep, and the middle age, it tends to be more difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, and um, so making sure that your sex hormones are tested for and in balance is critical. I already spoke about the importance of getting your growth hormone tested. We know that nearly all of your growth hormone, and in some circles it's called the anti-aging hormone, is produced at nighttime. And poor sleep, you're just not putting out the levels of growth hormone that need to be put out. It affects mood the next day. It affects energy the next day. It affects your body to heal properly the next day. And so chronically low growth hormone output due to poor sleep can turn out to be quite a problem. And the same is true of cortisol. So, ideally, the cortisol levels are increasing at night to combat inflammation, to combat oxidation, and then they decrease, usually 6, 7 a.m. as the day begins, and you no longer necessarily need cortisol. But individuals with long haul COVID or post vaccine injury, they tend to have altered circadian rhythms of cortisol, and cortisol in particular, also DHEA, and then the sex hormones just aren't produced as much. I mean, I've spoken to brilliant lab techs around the country, and uh, they all let me know that ideally the best time to test for some of these hormones is at night. It's rarely done unless you're in a clinical setting, a hospital setting. You might go in for a first morning fasting blood draw and have your blood drawn at, um, you know, 8 or 9 a.m. But ideally, having those hormones tested at night, it would be preferred, because that's when your body is actually churning out these hormones. So I think I've pretty much touched on um, everything that I wanted to. Let me get to a few questions here. Oh, no, I haven't. I wanted to share with you kind of my favorite list of natural substances that can be beneficial for sleep. Of course, there's medication out there, and if it's necessary, I mean, if you're going on a stretch of 4, 5, 6 days of just wretched sleep, then getting on board an occasional prescription medication for sleep might be beneficial, in addition to this bigger picture that we've been going over. But there are natural substances that can be helpful as well. And so I just want to review some of my favorite. The go-to for a lot of people is melatonin. And I want to caution you with melatonin. The body naturally produces it at night, and it is produced when the environment is dark. It's just such an interesting physiological process where the darker it is, the back of the eye actually communicates to the pineal gland and the brain, And the darker it gets, the more melatonin is produced. So if you've got a TV going on in the background while you're trying to sleep, or you're tapping on your phone as you're trying to fall asleep, you're working out of your bed, if you've got a bright alarm clock, even just slight amount of light can be detrimental to melatonin production. And I've studied melatonin for years and years, and it has a lot of benefit, but you have to be careful with taking exogenous or external um, melatonin. The key point that I want to make is more is not necessarily better. So I've worked with many patients, and um, they might start at a low dose, maybe 1 or 2 milligrams at night, and they don't see benefits, so they bump it up to 5, and then they bump it up to 10. The highest I've ever seen of a melatonin dose is 40 milligrams, which is just completely contraindicated as far as I'm concerned. That at least that dose. But more is not necessarily better. I've had people maybe start at 5 milligrams, they go up to 10, worse sleep-ins, they drop down to 1, and sleep gets better. So it's really about matching your own natural output of melatonin with the dose, because excessive melatonin, more is not better. It can actually aggravate sleep if you're taking more than your body physiologically needs. Um, and the studies are most clear on improving sleep with melatonin on shift workers, so individuals working at night and trying to go to sleep during the day, and then jet lag. Um, for just falling asleep and staying asleep, the results are actually inconsistent, and the inconsistency of the results is because of this dosing. More is not better. You really do have to try to match your dose to your own physiological output. Um, and then just a few more that I like. Acupuncture. Acupuncture, if you can schedule just a series of acupuncture appointments, maybe 1 or 2 a week for a month. Acupuncture has some pretty consistent results at improving sleep. Um, Tai Chi, yoga are definitely up there. One of my favorite two herbs for helping with sleep, of course, there's chamomile, there's lavender. Those are excellent to have a cup of chamomile lavender tea before you go to bed. Uh, but the two herbs that seem to most consistently improve sleep are ashwagandha and valerian. And I like ashwagandha for long haul COVID patients because not only does it improve sleep at night, and you take it at night, it can actually improve adrenal hormone function. It can improve brain fog and energy levels the next day. So I think for those patients, ashwagandha is a fairly good match. Um, okay, now I will get to questions. Let me see here. I'm stuck and can't seem to get the slow wave refreshing phase post REM. Any suggestions? Yeah. So there are 4 stages of sleep, and there's REM sleep. And for you to go through an entire cycle, it takes about 45 to 60 minutes. So in this case, it's not a difficult time falling asleep that's affected. It's frequent awakenings. And so here we're looking at things like, is inflammation causing that? Are blood sugar fluctuations causing that? Is depression contributing to that? Um, Brain fog and fatigue during the day tends to be more associated with depression, and we know that brain fog and fatigue during the day tend to be more associated with frequent awakenings and less so with with initially trying to go to sleep. So, any suggestions? Make sure your room is dark. I like ashwagandha. I would certainly recommend that. Give that a try. If you feel brain fog or poor energy or depressed during the day, you might work with a doctor to try to really balance out the mood so you're more stable during the day. Those would be my some of my initial suggestions. Uh, I'm not sure if this is associated with sleep, but I'll try to tackle it. What is causing the skin stiff feeling on my lower legs and pulsating mini twitches? If that's occurring at night, I might suggest that it's a mineral imbalance. So here we're thinking of potassium, magnesium, copper, zinc, and calcium. And there are lab tests, functional laboratory tests that can be run to kind of look at an overview of some of those minerals. Sometimes they're high, say in the case of copper, and sometimes they're low, say in the case of magnesium and potassium and zinc. And so that's the place I would start with the description of your skin and the mini twitching, especially if that mini twitching is occurring at night. I'm assuming it's maybe extremities, most commonly like the calves and the feet, and then the hands and the forearms. Sometimes it can occur on the facial muscles as well. Um, but minerals is the first place I would suggest you looking. This again, I don't think is about sleep, but I'll try to tackle it just because some other people may be interested in the answer. Hi, Doc. I have been doing intermittent fasting for more than a month. I just wanted to know what is the maximum hours safe to do per day that will not affect me later on. I would say the maximum, if so, a month. That's a considerable amount of time. I would say that the absolute maximum amount of fasting you should do per day is 20 hours. So the splits tend to be like 16 fasting and 8, uh, 18 and 6, and then 20 and 4. I don't see many people going beyond 20 hours of fasting. Um, you could do it for longer periods if it's just for a few days, but if your intention is to intermittent fast for a month or two, I would say maximum hold at 20 hours. Oh, I didn't read the rest of your question. I'm sorry. Mostly I do 18 and 6 and 20 and 4. Yeah, so either one of those are fine. After a month or two, I would get some blood work done just to make sure that there are no nutritional deficiencies that are occurring due to your intermittent fasting. Let's see. I have been taking recently calm magnesium before bed, sure, plus eating dark cherries to relax. Do you recommend that? Absolutely. So I think I've already touched on both of those. Um, it's sometimes just magnesium, so it could be magnesium citrate, it could be magnesium threonate, um, magnesium uh, glycinate. So those are usually the three magnesiums. Sometimes they throw in kind of a lower dose of calcium, so a cal mag supplement. Um, More often than not, it's a combination magnesium, but I think the most effective uh, form of magnesium for sleep is probably the magnesium glycinate, although they work very well in combination. Those three salts of magnesium, and then eating dark cherries can promote melatonin production. So that's a good combination. Let's see. Next question. Do you believe in food sensitivity tests? Well, belief is a powerful word. Yes, I believe they exist. Do I believe in the efficacy of food sensitivity tests? It depends on the lab, and it depends really on what you're looking for. So there are different types of food sensitivity testing. Most of them involve an IG of some kind, either an IgA, an IgG, or an IgM. I think or an IgE as well. Certainly, my favorite for any kind of like acute sensitivity, allergic, anaphylactic allergen would be IgE testing. And then my favorite for kind of ongoing slow smoldering food sensitivities would be IgG testing. Now, understand that there's a difference between food sensitivity and a food allergy. When we're looking at a food allergy, it's mostly the IgE that's going to pick that up. That's a direct kind of immediate alarm immune response. Um, I IgG can pick up both food allergies and some food sensitivities, but it's certainly nowhere 100% accurate. I think the numbers for food allergies, they're spot on. They're above 98%. For food sensitivities, the numbers are closer to maybe 80, 85% accuracy and sensitivity. So they're not 100% accurate, but I do think they can be beneficial. And here we're talking about serum tests. So there are different forms of allergy testing. There's skin prick testing. There's blood testing. There are a few companies for saliva testing. I'm not the biggest fan of food sensitivity saliva testing, but some of the blood tests can be eye opening. And remember, and I wouldn't do this with acute anaphylactic allergy, but if you suspect a food sensitivity, one of the better ways to determine if it's there or not is an elimination challenge diet, where you eliminate the foods that you suspect, or you make a list of foods that you're wondering about, eliminate them in their entirety for a couple of weeks, and then one by one reintroduce them into your diet. And you're just looking for change, and there's no such thing as coincidence. That change can be in the GI, it can be on the skin, it can be with mood, it can be with brain fog, it can be with energy levels, and it can be with sleep. So I like elimination challenge diet uh, slightly better. But it does take some time and commitment because you do have to be consistent with it. There's no cheating on the elimination challenge diet. I don't think I finished the question here. Yeah, so the individual states, I was using rice milk in my morning keto cereal, and I believe I had leaky gut. So rice showed up. Right. So if the GI tract is inflamed, if leaky gut is going on, even if you were not previously sensitive to a food, or you introduce a brand new food that maybe you didn't hardly ever consume, they can begin to show up on food sensitivity tests just because these proteins are now getting through. Those tight junctions are now less than tight junctions. And so those proteins can slip through those junctions in between the cells of the GI tract. And your immune system can start to pick them up and start to react to them, even though you hadn't before. So that experience is common. My recommendation for you is fix the leaky gut. I get no REM sleep. Well, I would be curious to know how you know that. Perhaps you've had some sleep studies done. And similar to an earlier question, here we're looking at stress levels during the day, depression, brain fog, fatigue during the day, more related to REM disorders. So make sure your room is super dark. Pay attention to noise, and this is physiological noise. This is psychological noise. This is real noise in the environment. That's critical, certainly. And again, I would give ashwagandha a try before bedtime. Um, what is causing internal vibrations? So it's a good question. It happens more post COVID and with long haul COVID patients, and we don't know. It's very very likely an imbalance in neurotransmitters, which we know happens post COVID and in long haul COVID patients. So here we're talking about serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine. And why do we suspect that? We suspect that because we know that when individuals are tapering off, um, certainly antipsychotic medications, but also antidepressants, SSRIs, SRNIs, and some medications are worse than others. When they're tapering off these medications and the neurotransmitters are kind of trying to rebalance themselves, individuals describe either like internal shocks or internal vibrations. And we think it's just a message that the brain is sending to the spinal cord and, sending throughout the body. So it's likely an imbalance in neurotransmitters. And there are functional medicine laboratory tests to test not directly for the neurotransmitters themselves, but for the urinary output of the metabolites of the neurotransmitters. And so that's an option, is to see, okay, how is my dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine levels. There are also some cool genetic testing that can be used to look at your body's neurotransmitter potential output, as well as how it's going to respond to certain medications. So that's an option too. All right, I just have maybe 10 more minutes, so I'll get to as many questions as I can here, okay? I just bought goat's milk colostrum. Great, super high in IgA, which is helpful, and take L-glutamine and collagen. So you're doing some fantastic things to heal the gut. I hope it helps as well. I would assume that's your intention, either to heal the gut or to support the immune system. Ever since starting antihistamine, specifically Allegra, I have a dry mouth. Yeah, that's one of the common side effects. And a weird taste. Yes, that's a result of the dry mouth. I hydrate with electrolytes and get hydration IVs. Great. Any idea why this is happening? So it's just a side effect of antihistamines. It's a pretty common one. Didn't happen with Zyrtec, but the Allegra is working a lot better than the Zyrtec for me. So yeah, they so making sure that you're well hydrated, 2 to 3 liters of water every day. Hydration IVs is an excellent idea. Um, I like hydrating certainly with just water throughout the day, but you could also add in electrolytes yourself, like Emergency or Noon tablets. That's NUUN. They just have electrolytes that help your body. And when it comes to hydration, it's really a balance between water and electrolytes. Why is it different between Allegra and Zyrtec? They're ever so slightly different forms of medication. They ever so slightly work on different mechanisms, decreasing the histamine output. And so it may be, genetically speaking, you're just going to be more sensitive to Allegra than you are with Zyrtec. They're just different medications, and each individuals respond to different medications genetically in different ways. COVID attacked my pancreas. My lipase levels keep dropping. My amylase is high. What can I do to stop the drop? Right now, I'm on enzymes, but I don't want to be on them forever. Forever is a long time. Forever is a big word. It depends on what kind of havoc, what kind of inflammation COVID caused for your pancreas. Certainly, the pancreas is responsible for producing digestive enzymes. And this is, without knowing you, without knowing your history, my initial advice to you is, make sure that you're taking, um, if it's a prescription or something that you got over the counter, make sure that you're taking an enzyme supplement that contains a minimum, if not more, a minimum of these three enzymes: lipase, amylase, and protease, because we want to make sure that we are actually digesting the foods once they get to the stomach, so that um, by the time they make it to the small and large intestine, and they're being absorbed, your body can hopefully balance them out in a more optimal way. Okay, last question, I think. Let me make sure nothing over here is going on. And if I didn't get to your question this week, I apologize. Tune in next week, and I'll get to your questions then. Thank you all for joining me this week. We do this every Tuesday, so um, please join at this same time. Tell your friends, tell your family. I have a telemedicine appointments as a functional medicine physician online, so I encourage you to reach out and make an appointment. Okay, last question. And then come back next week, or submit your questions online, and we'll try to get back to you. Okay. It's a question about vitamin C. Can ascorbic acid, vitamin C, be problematic in higher doses over longer periods of time? I mean, short answer is yes, especially if taken orally, especially if you're prone to kidney stones. And it depends on the dose. I would say if you're hitting that daily dose at 250 to 500 milligrams a day, probably not. If you're hitting that dose at 2 or 3 thousand milligrams a day, possibly. And so ascorbic acid, more times than not, and there are a few supplement companies that do a better job of it, but ascorbic acid, more times than not, is synthetically derived. Um, and it can be most problematic for the kidneys. And there's an interesting, again, genetic individuality regarding vitamin C. Some individuals, they start to have stomach upset, gas and bloating, diarrhea, kidney issues, even on small doses of ascorbic acid, 250 and 500. Whereas some individuals don't. They can take 2 or 3 thousand milligrams a day, uh, and their bowels are normal, their GI is normal, their kidneys are never affected. So that tends to be kind of individualized too. Are liposomal and rosehip preferred? Any more bioavailable? Yes, both, as well as a third that you didn't mention. There's a nano um, vitamin C, which is some interesting technology that kind of shrinks the molecule. So yes, liposomal, without a doubt, can make vitamin C more bioavailable. So you have to take less of it to have the same effect. Rose hips is kind of different. Rose hips, vitamin C, contains constituents that's kind of attached onto the vitamin C, which your body recognizes as a good thing. And so it actually absorbs and makes more of that vitamin C naturally available. Because let's face it, we evolved in a place where we were getting vitamin C not through a capsule, but through food. And, vitamin C is not isolated in nature, it's always attached to and vitamin C is beautiful to look under as a crystal, because you really can see it's attached to other molecules in the natural state. And then the nano vitamin C can be better absorbed and more bioavailable as well. So what's the advantage? The advantage is you get the same effect, but you can take less of a dose. Okay, so I think I got to be going at this point. Again, thank you for joining me. We do this every Tuesday, so tune in next week. If I didn't get to your question this week, I do apologize. Um, So thank you for your time. Be well, be healthy, be mindful, and be hopeful that we can improve. We all can improve. And so have a great week. Happy Tuesday, and we'll see you next week.